Hey friends, welcome to Creative Crew. My name is Brad Hussey, and today we have a special guest. His name is Kevin Whelan of kevin.me and howtoselladvice.com. We're going to be talking about transitioning from selling your hands and selling your execution to selling your thinking and selling your advice, becoming more of a strategist, an advisor, a mentor in your business rather than just doing the work. And we've got a lot of really interesting tidbits in this conversation here. So if you are a professional freelancer or you are an agency owner and you want to be able to incorporate or transition from the selling the doing to selling the thinking, then this one is definitely for you. So let's get into it.
Okay, well, today I'm a marketing advisor and I help companies grow and make marketing decisions. But it all started back over 20 years ago in my teens when I was making websites for things like my band, and I had a hobby website, and everyone I knew kind of was like, I was the resident tech guy. Hey, you can help me with the website or a design or a graphic of some kind of business card. So I started way back, to over 20 years ago as a teenager. I'm in my mid 30s now, going into my late 30s. And just slowly kind of did it on a part-time basis. I liked computers and I liked doing this stuff for fun, and I was nerding out on it. And at some point in time, I just built a little website because I was tired of doing stuff for free. I'm like, you know what? There's enough family and friends here asking me to do stuff that I should put up a little website, and then I could say, this is actually a business. So why don't I take some money for this, and then we can, I can actually get paid for some of my work. And that was kind of the genesis of my freelance career. I did it for years on the side. Didn't really even give it much credit. Didn't even think that it was a monetizable skill. I kind of just took it for granted, and it was sort of an extra thing. Several years later, though, after building websites for every company I worked for and kind of being the resident web guy, I kind of realized, whoa, there might be actually a career here. And I wanted to be more entrepreneurial. I wanted to be self-employed. So I went to school for entrepreneurship and basically built a business plan around my first business, which is a web design and digital marketing business. And that was it. And so after I finished that course, I actually had a job in corporate, working for a law firm, managing their online presence. But I built it on the side. And, first kind of lesson that I learned was, don't try to go out full time on your own until you've built a little stable roster, much like your story, Brad, of kind of revenue to kind of support that, because you don't want to be desperate at the end of the day for money, and you wouldn't be able to work in your client's best interest. It'd be weird. So I did that on the side. I almost burned myself out, but I was pre-kids and as a young guy. So that was in 2014. I made my leap into full-time web and digital marketing, and then did that for a number of years. And a lot of people kind of stop there. They do service work. They build websites for a living. They I started out offering some digital marketing services because I was capable of doing that. I'd been a bit of a generalist for a while. But what I realized was that I was in this weird stage where I wasn't specialized enough to command high premium fees. And it was kind of getting to the point where it's like, I either had to become a real agency where I had to hire, full-time staff and really lean into that model in order to make it financially viable in terms of what it could be. Like, I was making okay money, but I was working really hard for it and spinning all the plates. Or I kind of had a few different inspirations at the time. One of them was Alan Weiss's, value-based fees book. Another one was a book called Profit First, which is probably popular in the agency community. And basically the mindset was, instead of waiting until the end of the day, I would mark up other people's time. I would basically be a project manager and a strategist, create wireframes, direct and produce the whole thing. But instead of marking up other people's time to make a profit, what if I put my profit first and made the expenses, basically pass those along to the client at cost? So it's kind of like, how do I build in profit every engagement upfront? And it was just sort of these combination of influences that sort of led me down to consulting. I'm like, what I enjoy most is the strategy piece, is helping clients get a result, holding people accountable, hiring people. So I kind of started to dip my toes into this world of consulting. At the time, the fractional CMO wasn't really a thing, but essentially I was positioning myself. Like, instead of hiring a full-time marketing manager, I'll manage your marketing for you. And I'll pass along all the suppliers that I used to use. And instead of marking up their time, they become yours. And I'll manage it for as long as you need me. And then once you get to a stage where it makes sense, you can hire someone full-time and they're yours. And I can kind of go on my merry way. So fast tracking that, so that worked really well. I had 2 clients, and that got me to $9,000 a month. And I was like, this is a much more profitable business per input and effort, and I'm much more aligned with my clients. I was sitting on their side and not feeling like I had to prove every, do the dog and pony show every month with my reporting. And kind of really just able to sit on their side and make decisions together with them. And then at some point this is a long story, but at some point I started focusing more on the advisory side of things. So I said, well, the project management piece isn't even the most compelling thing that I do. It's the highest stress, most work, least valuable. What if I either shared responsibilities on that with the client or made it their responsibility entirely? And so a couple things happened. I started specializing in a co-working niche, flexible office niche. So I'm a generalist marketing advisor, CMO type. So I specialized in the co-working world and went down that rabbit hole, and I'm still in that world today as part of my business, about 50 or 60% of my business today. And now I purely advise. So the short answer is I basically help co-working spaces get full. I help them build the marketing systems and strategies. Sometimes there's website redesigns that I oversee with them, direct, and essentially get them to the result that they want using freelancers to implement. So I do that, and then I work with companies that are outside of that niche as well. And that kind of gives me this, a core belief of mine is you can be specialized and a generalist at the same time. And what you do is you build deep specialization, but you're still capable of helping other people. You just don't actively promote that. But the leads will still come to you. So you kind of have a doorway to show them and say, hey, if you're a business looking to build more formal marketing systems and strategies, I can help. So that's kind of my model today. And then 20% of my business or time or so I spend mentoring other marketing professionals on how to do similar things and create more leverage and profit by taking your expertise out of your head, selling advisory services, taking the expertise out of your head and selling that to combine with or supplement or, your regular services work, and eventually try to phase out of some of the execution work and more into advisory and teaching and that kind of thing. So that's the long picture, trying to condense it, but that's where I am today.
So how would somebody like a creative agency, web design agency who does a lot of execution work, how would they, and could they, is this possible to do it elegantly, offer some sort of strategy or advisory that's genuine? That's not like, hey, here's our excellent strategy that perfectly fits exactly what we offer, so you need to pick us. Is there a way that they could sell some sort of precursor to their service, but they can choose whichever direction, like they sell a road mapping session, so they're at least getting paid for their advice before the client goes and drops $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 on their bigger service? Like, is there a way to do that? Because there's so many creative professionals here who they'll be like, I did a couple 2-hour meetings with my clients, like in person or over the phone or over Zoom. And I gave them like a lot of advice and a lot of questions, and then they never ended up going with me. And that was like 5 hours I'll never get back because I did a proposal, did a lot of work. Where I've heard of design agencies, and I've done this myself too, where you just like say, yeah, I'll sit down and talk with you and we'll work through this in a road mapping session or whatever you want to call it, but it's $1,000. And then that can be applied to the service if we go this direction, or you could take it to whoever you want. Is there a way for that to happen, or is that authentic? What do you think?
Yeah, so 100%. So when I was selling web design services, I came across this idea of discovery and road mapping, and I think it's a really valid service, especially when your client doesn't have a full grasp or ability to create a scope. So they don't always know, how many templates do I need? How many pages is this thing going to be? What are the SEO? What's the overarching strategy? What's the goal? These things. So I would charge a fee, and it was too low in retrospect. It was like $1,000 or something, but I would charge a fee. I'd do an initial sales call and be like, I think we're a fit. It sounds like you don't have a really clear scope in mind, but here's how I work. I create a basic strategy document, understanding your market and understanding your goals. And we create basically the end of that is what was the scope of work. And then what I recommend you do is go shop that around to anyone you think might be a potential candidate for doing this. And that way I'm like, I've spent a lot of time learning about their needs, their business, and then written a document and then put together a really nice proposal that explains how many templates, how many pages, how long, how much it would cost. And I would keep the price separate. I would keep the scope in its own document with the strategy. And 9 times out of 10 clients wouldn't even shop it around. By the end of it, they'd be like, we like your price. You obviously understand our business. We don't have to do this again with someone else. But it allows them it allows you as the designer not to do this big scoping free work thing that you can't really solve the business problem they're hiring you for if you're just looking at it from scope perspective. So you have to think about the business first and what are the objectives? How are you going to help them achieve the goals of the business? then put a scope to that. And the only way you do that is by going through some kind of a discovery road mapping. Unless the client brings all that, and nine times out of 10 clients don't have the briefing skills to do that. So that's what I would definitely recommend with that. And and then you're doing the execution. Where it gets a little more tricky though is offering advisory services more broadly, like what I do, and then also full service agency. It kind of it's too messy. You really can't have that conflict of incentives factor, where it's like, I can either advise you and then refer my team. Like, you can't, to me, it gets messy when you sell advice and implementation at the same time in a full spectrum service. So you either have to basically separate, if you wanted to be a broader marketing advisor, you'd have to separate that and make it, or make a decision about how you're going to handle that. But
yeah, it sounds like it's almost like a case for being that generalist, jack of all trades actually comes quite in handy in this role, where you're not like if you only know and have mastery in, say, SEO or graphic design, but you don't really know how email marketing fits into the picture, or how paid acquisition works, or how, your funnel flows from nurturing leads to, delivering services to, copywriting. Like, there's so much in this whole marketing world. Having like a full kind of like spectrum of understanding and being that generalist, and not just having razor focus in one area, seems like it actually comes quite in handy, because then you can go, look, I'm not the best copywriter, but I know the best copywriter, or I know what the best copywriting, what's required for the best copywriting for your situation. And in fact, I've got 3 of them. One's very expensive and one's more up and coming, but really hungry. It's like, it actually seems like it come in handy.
Yeah. So let's use that as an example, right? So what happens if you can code and design websites, you probably know enough about social media and potentially other channels, or at least maybe you've dabbled in it, or you can interpret the quality of something or help hire and vet people. If, let's say, for example, you were to get into advisory, I typically recommend having your own second website under your own name, or if you already have a website under your own name, then maybe a separate business that has a brand name. So you're basically become, hey, I'm Brad, and I own, this web design business, but I'm a creative professional, and I can help advise you on your broader marketing. Now, where that message gets even more effective is when you say, I also specialize in X. And so now you're bringing a generalist skill trait. You're T-shaped. You have deep expertise in, say, web or design, but you've developed all these other skills so you can manage them effectively, or at least hire and vet quality and oversee it and guide it to create a business result. You have some knowledge of business. And I specialize in helping, brick and mortar business, or even plumbers to build marketing engines or whatever, right? So then you can be more generalist in your skill set, as long as you've learned to get a business result for a specific target market. And then your hands become less valuable. I don't care. That's when your head becomes independent of your hands, where they're like, I see you're very credible at solving problems for people like me, business problems that have a financial component. I will take on you as the advisor that helps oversee a wide breadth of skill sets. And so that's how you combine that. It's really hard to just be a generalist advisor, which is why I went into the co-working niche. I'm like, I can't scale this. I can't build an audience. I can't build an email list for all businesses.
Yeah.
These too broad. So I just followed my best clients down to co-working, and that made that offer really compelling. And then now I speak on stage, panelists, conferences, podcasts.
If you have a niche of a target market and you go, I want to serve and do business with, well, we tend to, we're saying dentists a lot, so I'll use that example. So dentists, a lot of dentists, and they need business. So if you want to sell your website and your marketing and your design services and build sites for dentists, well, now at least you know, first of all, who they are, and now you can go and do some work to find out, well, where do they go, and what time of day, what do they talk about? Where can I find them? Where can I be, so that when I go fishing for them, I could be in the right spot? But then you also need to know, what's the right lure or hook, bait, to use these metaphors here. What interests them? What will make them say, hey, we should get on a call, so that you can offer your services?
Yeah. And you can do that in a much more leveraged way than if you're going after a broad market going after a broad market is kind of like trolling the bottom of the ocean. You get some boots, you may get some fish, but they're never the best, meatiest fish.
Yeah.
And that's not that fun to catch them, and then, whatever. But when you focus on a target market, you can build an audience, or at least an email list, a basic one. You can build a following. You can build reputation in a space. It's really hard to build an email list if you don't have a niche. So I couldn't build one ever. And then as soon as I picked my niches, now I've got multiple email lists, attracting people daily that are really in my specific target market. And then you can think about things like, I have something called the golden goose strategy. And so rather than going and looking for the golden eggs, the specific clients, which breaks our fishing analogy, or maybe it doesn't, but how do I find the people who aggregate an audience of my target market and just get in front of them and do it in two ways? The method is this way. So let's say you focus on dentists. You're like, how do I get on the podcast of that dentist, so that of that marketing for dentist podcast, so that I can get right in front of people who are looking to get help with their marketing for dentists? You do that in two ways. One is you share your expertise. And so having valuable expertise that you've talked about and you've written about and you've demonstrated on your website and you've got examples and you're credible, that's how you do it. But the other thing is then also having your own audience is a form of currency to get you into the door of these audience aggregators, because education isn't just enough. They also, when you speak on stage, I get asked to speak on stage or be a panelist. They don't want me just for my expertise, which I hope that they do. They also know that I have an email list of their target market, and I'm going to go promote that event. And so there's a bit of a boost that way. So they get a dual benefit of. So if you just think of incentives, you align yourself with the organizers of these groups, that allows you to create a lot more leverage and get a lot more interest quickly, because you're not going after the individual fish. Now you're looking for who's got these boats that are hanging these hooks off the line every day. How do I get my lure on one of those? And that works really well.
Oh, Kevin, this is a total pleasure. This is like a great way to start my day. It's like prime, when people get up in the morning and they have like a morning routine, it's like, it primes me for the day. This is the sort of thing, like I could start the day like this, where you're like, you exercise your brain and you kind of think straight. So this is really cool. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us. Tell us where, I know you mentioned a number of websites and areas where we can see what you're up to. Tell us, where can we find you? What should we check out of what you're doing? Feel free to let us all know, and we'll put it all in the notes and the descriptions and everything.
Well, thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me on this. It's always great to talk shop, and that's what I love doing. You can find me on Twitter sometimes, and kevin.me is my main website. That has links to everything that I offer and I do, and my membership is howtoselladvice.com, but you'll find that through kevin.me. But yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting with you and your group here, and excited to stay involved in the community. And yeah,
appreciate it, Kevin. Thanks for tuning in, friends. If you like that episode, join us in the Creative Crew at creativecrewcommunity.com. It's a free community for professional designers and agency owners like you who want to grow, level up, and network with the best of the best. Join us there, and we'll see you in another video. Cheers.